All right. In this video, I want to address a silly argument that comes from Catholics and the Orthodox that they think proves their point of view, but actually exposes their point of view. And they ask, what did the early church do? And this is in context of using the scriptures. Because when I talk to the Catholics and the Orthodox, I'll ask them things about the scriptures and say, is there anything outside of the scriptures that I need as a Christian? And I know they want to say yes, but they won't say that. Like, they don't feel comfortable saying that. Because then they're opening the idea that their traditions don't line up with the scriptures. So they don't want to say yes, but because it would expose the fact that they have traditions that don't line up with the scriptures. And they want to say no, but then you can dismiss them and their church and their traditions because you have everything you need in the scriptures. So it kind of puts them in a dilemma where they don't really want to answer. And they usually don't. So they'll jump subjects like they always do. They sidestep the truth and they'll say, well, the early church didn't have the New Testament, so what did they have to do? They had to rely on the church. But you see, there's two problems there. First, we can read in Acts 17:11 and Revelation chapter 3, verse 2, that the early church had the Old Testament, and they used the Old Testament to test the people who claim to be apostles, to see if they really were apostles, to see if what they were saying lines up with what was written, the scriptures, and the scriptures they had at the time. That's how they were able to test them. But they'll say, but not everybody had the scriptures. And it's like, yes. And therein is where your church comes about. It took advantage of the fact that the people didn't have a copy of the scriptures, either in their area or individually. So then your churches, the Catholic and the Orthodox, they could sit there and say, you need to just blindly accept what we have to say, and you can't test us to the scriptures because they're not here. We're going to tell you what's what. So their argument about what did the early church do? Well, the early church got away from the scriptures and manipulated the people to bring in false doctrine to get them away from the scriptures and to follow the church and end up turning the church into an idol and making it their mediator between them and God. It went into apostasy. Because now that we have the scriptures and we all can have our individual copy, we can see this. And that's why people wanted to leave the Orthodox and Catholic Church, because then they could see the scriptures and see that, hey, you took advantage of the fact that we didn't have a Bible and you lied to us. So we didn't know what God really said. Now we know what God said, and we can see what you did. And then you try to say, well, they didn't have the scriptures. They had to rely on us, so you should rely on us too, like the early church did. No, that's where the early church went wrong. And why it ended up creating the Catholic and Orthodox Church. Because they didn't have the scriptures. You're proving the apostasy. You're proving how your church got set up. It needed the absence of the scriptures to get everybody to accept their BS. But now that we have it, they want to say, well, my church gave you the scriptures. All right, your church gave us the scriptures, then we should follow it, right? The Orthodox gave us the Bible. The Catholics gave us the Bible. Okay, how about we use it then? What's wrong with using it then? Nothing, right? Oh, well, we're the only ones that can interpret it. According to who? Well, my church. Well, how convenient is that? That doesn't sound culty at all. Only we can determine what it really means. And it means what we say it means. Not what you think it says there. It clearly says something there, but it's not what it seems to say. It really means something else that completely agrees with my church. Oh, that's weird, because it seems to completely openly contradict what your church has to say. All right? So, this argument that they think actually supports following their church actually shows that it's a problem. You can see in the New Testament alone, Paul having to write letters of correction to the churches. You have the Galatians going after a false gospel, right? You got others saying, "Oh, I'm of Paul, I'm of Cephas, I'm of this guy and that guy, whoever baptized him," right? And you got all this stuff. He's like, "Hey, why you all doing all this nonsense here?" You got John in 3 John talking about how one of the bishops kicked him out of the church and wouldn't let him in. You got John also writing Revelation chapters 2 and 3, where he writes the 7 churches. Most of them have problems, and a lot of problems, going after false doctrines. Balaam, Jezebel, all this nonsense. So the early church wasn't perfect. The Catholics and the Orthodox like to make you think that the early church was somehow perfect and free from error, and they're just following in their footsteps. No, they were full of false doctrines, full of tares, full of wolves in sheep's clothing and Judas goats. It was full of dead fish, full of idol shepherds and hirelings, false prophets, false teachers. Even Peter warns of that there's going to be false teachers among the church, right? And they're the ones that took over and took advantage of the fact that the people did not have the scriptures to test them. But the people who had the scriptures were able to test these people and be like, "You're not true apostles." And Paul encouraged such a thing. Acts 17:11, he encouraged the Bereans to test him to the scriptures, saying that they were noble in doing so. He didn't say, "Hey, you need me to interpret that for you. You can't read them on your own and understand them." But your church would say the opposite, showing that your church is corrupt and has become a cult that's drifted away from Christianity, and now we have a light to guide us through life, which is the scriptures, and we can see that. And then you'll use all these arguments to give some kind of lip service to the scriptures, saying, "Oh, my church gave you the scriptures." Okay, thank you. Let's use them then. Just like thank Israel, thank the Jews for giving us the Old Testament, and basically even writing the whole New Testament as well. Thank them, even though they're in apostasy, they reject Jesus, but still thank them for their work anyway, right? So these arguments they come up with are just silly. They only work on people who don't think, that don't take the time to be like, "Well, does this make sense?" And hopefully this short video got you to think about that. So with that being said, thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate it. If you want to help support this channel, please like, subscribe, hit the bell icon, share the video, share the channel, interact in the comment section. These things help out so much. And if you want to help out more after that, because you're able to, awesome. There's 4 ways you can donate to the ministry in the info description box if you so choose. But anyway, with all that being said, let's just wrap this up. Thank you for watching. Take care. I'll see you in the next one, and may God bless you and yours.